and it's the same again today.
I'm really sorry, folks. I didn't know this programme was on Channel 5 earlier on. It was about 5 pm. I just returned from home and I just put the TV on, and then I noticed that was on. I thought, oh God, I wasn't aware. I know there's one on Channel 4 at the moment. I'll try and bring you the juiciest bits of that a little bit later on. But let's have a look at this one.
Fortunately, though, that can come at a cost. A 16-year-old boy, as you said, Dan, died on Saturday evening after swimming with friends in this canal basin. And then on Sunday, tributes have now been paid to the 13-year-old Robert Hattersley, who unfortunately died while swimming in the River Tyne. Tributes have been paid today from his family. And today we've also had, unfortunately, another death from another 16-year-old, and that it was involving a lake in Maidenhead. So you can see really the dangers that come with swimming in open water. One person who is on the lookout is Billy Fennick. You're the head of prevention here at Greater Manchester Fire and Rescue Service. It's hot, but it does come at a cost sometimes, Billy, doesn't it?
Yeah, good afternoon, Brad. First and foremost, on behalf of Greater Manchester Fire and Rescue Service, we'd like to express our condolences and sympathies to the family and friends of Caelan, who tragically lost his life here in a water-related incident on Saturday afternoon. Obviously, that shows the dangers that can be presented with open water. Last year in England, there were 165 deaths from drowning and 238,000 globally. So it's really important that we try and get our water safety messaging across, which is be safe in the water, be water aware and respect the water. And information can be found online and on those hashtags of be water aware and respect the water.
Yeah, Billy, it can be awfully tempting when the sun's out. People even behind you are getting into the water here at Salford Quays. But just specifically, those dangers, when you get in, there's water shock, there's many things that can really trigger that sense of danger.
Indeed, Brad, yeah. Our key messages are don't jump in open water. You never know what's lurking beneath the surface, lots of hidden dangers, and also cold water shock can kill. Many people don't recognise that there's probably only about 50 centimetres of water that's heated by, even on a hot day like this, that warms up, and beneath that, and beneath the surface of the water, it really is cold water, and cold water shock can kill people.
Well, Billy, good to get your thoughts on that. That's Billy Fennick, the head of prevention at Greater Manchester Fire and Rescue Service. So, Dan, it is very hot, but as I say, sometimes, unfortunately, that can come at a cost.
Yeah, Bradley, thank you for that. It's a really important warning for everybody to listen to. We're talking there about getting in or staying out of the water. In terms of drinking water, we all know that hydration is so important at a time like this. We're all being told to drink as much as we can. These hot conditions are actually drying up some of our natural resources. Peter Lane is in North Yorkshire for us tonight. Peter can tell us a little bit about the reservoir levels are like in that part of the country.
Yeah, hi Dan. Well, what's happening is right now we've got less water going into the system thanks to the fact that we've just had a much drier than normal autumn, winter, spring and summer, and we've got more water coming out of the system, of course, because of these heat wave conditions. So on a day like today, here in Yorkshire alone, an extra 200 million litres of water will be consumed. Reservoir levels are manageable, but they're getting lower, and at Frostcross, that means the past is re-emerging. Here we are in what used to be a thriving village many decades ago. You can see the footprint, the stonework and outline of one of the original homes here. All of the villagers were moved out in the 1960s, and this area was flooded to create a reservoir. So normally this would be well underwater, and I certainly wouldn't be able to stand here. But because of the weather we're having right now, and in the months leading up to this, little bits of the village are starting to resurface and re-emerge, not least that long wall there, now very much a dry stone wall once again, which we think used to stand at the back of the church and graveyard. Now the village itself may have gone, but a number of farms circle this reservoir. So what does the heat wave mean for them? We've been speaking to one local farmer.
So there's a lot of concern around welfare of your animals and making sure that your animals are all hydrated and nothing's getting heat stroke out there in this heat. We've got very limited shade for our livestock because it's up on hills, up on the hill land, so they're quite high up because we're 1,000 feet above sea level here. So yeah, we're really concerned about the welfare. We're checking 3-4 times a day going round. My husband's currently filling up a water bowser because the springs dried up that they would usually drink out of. it's sort of slowing down your grass growth, which you need your grass growth for your hay cuts or your haylage or silage, depending on what you're farming. And you try and keep a positive outlook on everything, because if you don't, it's very easy to get stuck in your own depressive cycle with that as well. But yeah, I really feel for the farmers out there cutting grass, sat in the tractors. It's hard work.
So spare a thought for the farmers, and the advice of course is really think about how you're using water. Showers, not baths, that's the rule. Watering cans, not hoses. Don't leave any taps running longer than you need to. And if you're panicking about your lawn because it now looks yellow or brown and very dead, just leave it, don't water it. Nature will take its course. In the end, it will recover on its own.
Very helpful advice. And we're trying, thank you Peter, we're trying as much as we can tonight to give you a bit of information, but also some news you can use, I suppose. And it's not just us feeling the heat. Temperatures are soaring across Europe as well. It shows you some pictures from various parts of the continent. Thousands of firefighters are battling wildfires there. This is Gironde in the southwest of France. More than 10,000 people have been evacuated from their homes in the country there. Imagine seeing this outside your train window. Incredible pictures, isn't it? This train is in northwest Spain, was forced to stop briefly when it passed burning forests. It did get moving again, thankfully, and the good news is that thankfully nobody was injured in that. Parts of Portugal reached a record 47 degrees last week. Over 160 people have been injured in the fires there, and one pilot who was in charge of a firefighting plane sadly died there in Portugal. And fire isn't the only visible impact of this heat wave. At the other extreme, ice. A huge new crack has appeared in the Marmolada Glacier, that's in northern Italy. 2 weeks ago, a large chunk, you might remember, broke off. We told you about that on 5 News. That caused an avalanche which killed 11 people. So we're trying our best to keep you across developments at the moment. So, what is this, and does it tell us something about a trend towards more extreme weather? Catherine Jones in the studio for us tonight and has been looking through some of the statistics. Catherine.
Thanks, Dan. Now, we do often tell you where the UK is hotter than Ibiza or Athens or wherever, but today it actually makes more sense to tell you where in the world is hotter than the UK, because it is hardly anywhere. It got as hot as 37 Celsius in the UK, and only these regions globally exceeded that, most of them in the Middle East, where it hit 44 in Saudi Arabia, also in Baghdad in Iraq, although just over the channel, Paris experienced highs of 39. Now, you may also have heard people comparing this heat wave to the summer of 1976. And it's true, temperatures exceeded 30 Celsius across the UK for many days in a row back then. But take a look at this global comparison. In 1976, the UK was almost unique. Now, we are part of something much bigger. And finally, have a look at this graph. The Met Office tweeted today the UK's 10 hottest days ever. 1976, around here, doesn't even make the cut. Aside from 1910, over there, 9 of the 10 hottest days have been since 1990. A warning in the data that climate scientists have been yelling about for years.
It's much more serious than 1976, because now we're going to keep seeing these heat waves coming again and again and becoming more extreme. And the problem is not just stopping life for a few days and hiding from the sun. It's going to have big impacts on agriculture. So it's going to feed into higher food prices. And those higher food prices will keep going up as climate change hits food production.
So, Dan, not just 2 days to endure and then things get back to normal. This is a taste of the kind of weather event we will have to get used to.
Thank you very much for that, Kathy. Plenty to think about there. We'd love to know what you're thinking at home tonight watching this programme. Are you worried about climate change? Maybe this extreme weather has made it feel real, perhaps, for the first time in the way you didn't think it was before. Or are you still convinced it's not an issue? I'm armed, hopefully in this pocket, yes, I did put it in there, with the 5 phone tonight. There it is. You can WhatsApp us on the number on the screen, 07555 500 501. That's how you can get in contact. You can also find us on Twitter, on Facebook and Instagram, and we'll definitely be going through some of those messages for you a little bit later in the programme. If you've just switched on, we are live in Cambridge tonight. This is where the record UK temperature was broken a few years ago. It was 38.7 degrees then. It's really hot here today as well. Lots of people jumping in the pool for a cool down. The temperature in there is 25 degrees. It sounds lovely. Mike, who's actually one of our cameramen today, he got here early, went for a swim, did a kilometre in about 18 minutes. He's a beast. It's the joint second longest Lido in Europe, if you like that sort of thing.
I couldn't
But
do
there
that.
are, on the serious side of things, real health concerns about the impact of today's temperatures. And after the break, we're going to be talking to a health expert about those risks. Plus,
I'll have top tips you may not have thought of for keeping you and your pets cool during the heat wave, with or without a paddling pool.
all that on the way. We'll see you after the break. Is in Spain, caught between two banks of fire. Some horrible pictures. You can imagine what it was like to be on that train at that time. Thankfully, everybody was okay. Now, we're going to speak to you live on the programme now to Robbie Camilleri from the UK Health Security Agency. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. That's the branch of the government which looks after public health. I suppose the key is, let's start off with the basics. What sort of risks to health are people experiencing, some of our viewers going through, because of this extreme heat at the moment?
So we know very well that there are risks to those of us who are more vulnerable, especially those with pre-existing heart or lung conditions, and also those that are more elderly. And every year where we have episodes of excess heat, we know that there is some excess mortality associated with that. The issuing this level 4 alert is also important because there may be instances where those that are normally fit and healthy may also become unwell rather than those that are just more vulnerable.
Robbie, lots of people have come down here to this pool in Cambridge today just simply to cool down. Many people have come after school, some came during their lunch break, because this is the only place they feel they can feel a little bit cool today, and regulating body temperature is essential on a day like today for many people in the UK.
Yeah, our key advice is really to take on as much water as possible to avoid becoming dehydrated. It's really important that everyone checks in on their friends, family, neighbours, especially those that are vulnerable, to make sure that they know how they can stay safe, keeping hydrated, keeping cool. If you do have to go outside, make sure you wear suitable clothing, a wide-brimmed hat, and apply some sunscreen. Importantly as well, it is that you don't go out between 11 a.m. and about 3 p.m. when the sun is at its hottest.
Okay, Robbie Camilleri from the UK Health Security Agency, thank you very much for that. And we'll be talking about the government response in the programme a little bit later on as well, with some other guests we're going to be speaking to live on Channel 5. So, how are you feeling tonight? Are you sat sweltering on the sofa? Are you dreading trying to get to sleep this evening? Fear not, we've got some tips to try and stop you getting too hot under the covers tonight. Toby Sadler has been getting advice from environmental scientist Angela Terry.
Today, when it is insanely hot, what's the first thing we should think about to try and keep ourselves cool?
Well, the first thing is to find out if it's hotter inside or outside.
Okay, straightforward. Let's go and do that.
Wow.
Oh yeah, so it's American Inferno. Let's get back inside as quickly as possible.
So we want to be in the cool. We
Yeah.
want to be in the shade.
So what do we need to do?
Shut
Pets in, of course.
pets in.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So, what are we doing?
Shut the windows, shut the doors.
Okay, shut that.
And then we need to be pulling down the blinds
Yeah.
to block the sun from heating up our home.
Okay, so how do we keep ourselves cool? The fan here seems like an obvious start, but is that the right way to go?
Yeah, definitely. So obvious one is staying in the shade. That's really important in this hot weather. Secondly, the fan on you, the person cooling you down, so it's not going to cool the room down.
Why have I got a big bowl of water in front of me?
So this is like a air conditioning unit.
Okay.
So we've got a fan, we've got the water,
Yeah.
and what this is going to do, especially if we add some ice, this will add cooling impact.
DIY.
Yeah, this is a DIY air conditioning unit. So yeah.
It's not an instant feel, but it's
No.
slow build.
No, yeah. So this is how we are cooling the air, is with this bowl of water and the ice.
Right, and explain to me why you've got to be pushing this parasol around my garden. What's going on?
So we're just trying to keep the house cooler by blocking out the sun, especially if you've got big windows, bifold doors. Most people have one. It's much cheaper than buying an awning.
That simple way of shading the back of the house.
Exactly.
Right. What about night time where it's so hot and sticky and horrible, and why am I holding my daughter's pyjamas?
So pop those in the freezer a couple of hours before kids need to go to bed, or a sheet. It'll keep them cool so they can fall off to sleep in this hot weather. Take the duvet off their bed as well, so they just have a sheet, and then open the windows, get as much draft through as possible, and have a cool shower before you go to bed, but not too cold.
And don't forget your pets. No walks in the heat, avoid hot pavements. Shade is perfect, but then so too is their own paddling pool. Toby Sadler, 5 News.
I was taking notes during that, some very helpful advice. Stick with us here on Channel 5. We're here until the end of the hour, and we do have, you might be very pleased to hear, some other news for you throughout the day. Remember these? Warning about going swimming in open water like rivers and lakes after 3 teenagers have died in the last few days. Well, we've just had the forecast from Claire. Delighted to say she's still with us. I mean, can I call this weather ridiculous? And where on earth does it come from, Claire?
Oh my goodness, well, we've heard in the news about Iberia, the temperatures there reached 47 degrees Celsius, but a red alert currently across the western side of France. Vigilance Rouge, I believe they call it, and it's that heat that is slowly wafting its way across the UK and will continue to do so. So we're talking not only about high heat, but also high levels of pollution as well, particularly low levels of ozone, which cause breathing difficulties. But that heat is even wafting further north. So for Scandinavia, Sweden, we're expecting temperatures of 38 degrees Celsius.
Wow.
Much further north than Scotland. So yes, this is crazy times for Western Europe.
And talking to quite a few people around the pool today, not talking just about today, but how they feel about the future, it seems that we are beginning to get a head around the fact that this is something we're going to have to get used to. Is that the case?
Absolutely, and I think we're seeing these records being broken time after time, and we are adapting to it, certainly we are, but these type of heat waves, they do cause really big impacts on health as well as infrastructure, so really it's future-proofing, that's what we need to do. But it's planting trees, it's greening our urban areas, so people have some respite. It also lowers costs when it comes to heating bills, etc., air conditioning. So all these things, they're called soft solutions to adaptation, and it's almost like a no-brainer, Dan, really, isn't it? Of course, grass and green spaces are going to be much better than concrete and hard roofs.
Okay, you can't go home yet because you're going to come back at the end of the programme when we go through some of the five-phone comments as well. Now, if you've got kids, I wonder if you sent them to school today, because quite a few here have come straight from school. Were you worried about taking them in at all? Maybe the school made the decision for you, because dozens of schools have shut today in various parts of the United Kingdom. Head teachers saying the buildings just aren't designed to cope with the heat we're experiencing at the moment. And it can be even harder for schools with very vulnerable children. Catherine Nash has been to one specialist school trying their best to adapt.
So you take out an apple, a little bit of an apple.
This maths lesson was meant to be taught outside, but not today. For these students who all have cerebral palsy, keeping cool is a priority.
Simple things are very exhausting for them because they require so much effort to take part anyway, but with the heat they have to put in a lot more effort into anything they would normally do. So with that extra heat, they're going to be a little bit more tired, so we have to plan activities that say it's not going to exhaust them too much and they can still be learning as well as being comfortable and meeting all their other needs as well, which is a challenge.
Okay, here's some water coming up, Asha.
As temperatures soar, lessons have had to be adapted. Fans, water sprays, and even cooling blankets help to regulate body temperature, essential tools in the classroom on days like this.
About planning activities that we can do where it's cool, about maximising the use of our shady, cool spaces, having fans in classrooms, making sure everyone's hydrated.
But one student didn't make it to class today. Preston stayed at home. His dad concerned about the effects of the heat.
Anything above sort of 25 degrees has been a real struggle. So we find the energy levels can drop, it can become a little bit dehydrated. So he seems okay right now, but what you'll find is he'll decline, and there's a risk of like seizures and things like that. So we have to be really careful.
For these students, for now, lessons will continue inside. It's the only way for them to stay safe in the heat, while the temperature outside stays so high. Catherine Nash, 5 News, Hampshire.
Now, we've been talking a lot about climate change, about the impact that we are having on the world around us. Delighted to say we're joined by Professor Emily Shuckburgh from the research team at Cambridge Zero. So you've not had to come too far to be with us today. Lovely to have you here. It's interesting, isn't it? Because most people here, and I suppose in many places around the country, are trying to get that balance right between enjoying the weather but taking the warnings seriously. Do you think that's the case?
No, absolutely. So for many people, I mean, look at them here, having a wonderful time in the sun. But also, as you have been repeatedly stressing, for some people, this is really dangerous, and particularly the elderly, the very young babies and toddlers, women who are pregnant, for example. High heat can be deadly.
And lots of people having that conversation as well. I spoke to one lady here today who said, you know, I lived through the summer of 1976, there's nothing different. I mean, what do you say to that point of view, saying it's just like something we've experienced, you know, back in the 1970s? How is this different to that?
Yeah, well, so 1976 was a very hot summer, but at the time it was a one-off. And then now we've seen 2003 is a very hot summer, 2006 is a very hot summer, 2018 is a very hot summer, record temperatures here in Cambridge in 2019, and then now this heat wave. It's not a one-off any longer, this is normal, and in fact, actually, it's getting hotter and hotter all the time because of climate change.
Okay, so I suppose the key question with regards to that is, what can we do to change that, and how do we adapt to what's happening? So how do you answer those questions if you can?
Well, the biggest thing that we can do to change that is to stop our emissions of greenhouse gases, because that's what's causing climate change. But also, we need to look at how we can adapt to the climate changes that we're experiencing. The sort of heat waves, and you've been saying how difficult it is for schools and hospitals, for example, to cope in these high temperatures. But also, we've seen flooding events impacting communities around the UK, causing complete devastation. So that's another impact of climate change that we need to adapt to.
And finally, what do the government need to do? Because, you know, you speak to ministers a lot, we speak to them on this programme, and you tend to hear the same sorts of things. Do you think the importance and the seriousness is sinking in at that level?
No, it's a simple answer.
How do you change that?
You know, and I say that as a climate scientist who's studied the climate for 30 years, and we've been warning about the risks of climate change for 30 years. Really, this government and governments around the world have to take it seriously. We have to reduce our emissions rapidly if we're to avoid dangerous climate change.
Emily Shuckburgh, really appreciate your time. Thank you very much. I'd be interested to know whether our viewers, how they react in terms of their messages to what you've been saying as well. And we've been asking for your view on the 5 phone about climate change. How does it feel? Does it feel more urgent after what we've been seeing over the last few days and will experience tomorrow in parts of the UK as well? We will hear and read some of those back after we've gone to Catherine in the studio with some of the rest of today's news.
Thanks, Dan. Let's bring